I had here in my notes the story about MacKeeper, this sort of much maligned and apparently deservedly so, really not a great reputation, Macintosh maintenance, I don't know what, DNC tool of some sort. I mean, it's supposed
not,
to,
it's like the equivalent of a registry cleaner. It deletes temp file. It's just
anyway. So the story, the part of this that our listeners will get a kick out of, well, sort of, is that a bored IT help desk guy, Chris Vickery, one evening.
I didn't know that. I thought he was a security researcher. He's just some guy.
Yeah, he's an IT help desk guy. He answers the phone and tells people, okay, plug it into the green port. So he was poking around using Shodan. We've talked about Shodan. It's, it basically, in the way that Google spiders port 80 and 443, which is the HTTP and HTTPS ports, Shodan spiders everything else. So you can think about a web search engine is going to, it follows links and indexes things, the contents of servers that answer connections to port 80 and 443. Shodan says, there's a 65,533 more ports. What's there? Maybe there's some other new stuff there. And so it indexes those. So Chris, bored one evening, asks Shodan, what do you have on port 27101? And it returns a bunch of IPs. It's like, yeah, there's things answering 27017. I'm sorry, I got it. Now I'm not sure because I have it 101 in one place and 17 in the other, but one of those two ports. I think it's 27017. Turns out the very popular Mongo database, when it sets up, it opens a listening connection, a socket on that port, and will accept requests, queries, database queries on that port. Of course, you never want to have that exposed. That's in your intranet behind hopefully 3 or 4 layers of firewalls and NATs and all kinds of stuff, so that there's no way that Shodan wandering around the internet is going to get an answer from your database server. But in this case, he found 4 IPs. Shodan responded to Chris's query, which, by the way, this has been fixed since. Chris acted very responsibly. Found 4 IPs belonging to Cromtech, which is the publisher of this MacKeeper utility. It turns out, and so he was like, oh, interesting, logs in to their database server, and it's, he's not even a Mac user, but, this just turns up. So he does a little Googling and figures out how to log in to MongoDB, does so, and finds 21 gigabytes of remotely accessible Cromtech MacKeeper customer data. I mean, just everything that they've got on these people. Now, the good news is he informs them. They quickly closed the public exposure, and they claim that looking at the login records of their database, nobody else ever did that. Chris,
and then they called the guy and asked him, and he said, "No, I didn't do anything wrong."
Right.
So, I feel better.
And you and I were talking about this before. This is one of the other problems we are sort of struggling with, sort of as an industry and conceptually, and of course with pressure, unfortunately, from the entertainment industry that's got its own agenda in the form of the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, is it can be illegal to look at somebody else's copyrighted cryptography. But all the lessons we learn here on this podcast is that you have to have other eyeballs on this stuff. It's Google's people and their Project Zero that are examining not only their own code but other code and finding things we're glad they found. I mean, we want this to happen anyway. So there's a danger that Chris faced because these guys, if they were really evil, could say, "Oh well, you connected to our servers. You knew that was wrong. We're going to go after you legally." Good news is that didn't happen. They thanked him. He said, "You're welcome." And then presumably he's going to be poking around at Shodan some more. We may be hearing more from Chris in the future. But boy, the idea of these database services or servers like that being publicly exposed is horrifying. And then, the idea that you could have a global search engine that you can query. It says, give me some IPs for things that answer this port. And then, it says, "Oh, here's a list." And then you sort of go, okay, go through them.
Super valuable though, right? I mean,
yeah, super valuable for security research. Also, unfortunately, when you find out that like all the light bulbs people have installed have a bad server that allows you to break into everyone's LAN that their light bulb is sitting on, that's a problem. So, a mixed blessing. But if Shodan didn't exist, somebody else would just do it themselves privately because that's not a hard thing to do.